Welcome to the deserts of Syria. Combat Mission Shock Force 2 has been stealthily released. That means that the base game and the content of all three modules are out there ready to be played. What I want to bring you guys is a bit of an overview of all the different factions and a bit of the flavour of the game by playing through some of the scenarios against the AI. Obviously the AI is not up to the same standard as a human opponent. The advantage of a game against the AI is that it generally takes a few hours max, while a play-by-email game against another human being generally takes a few weeks minimum. So these videos are going to be similar to the day at the beach video I did for the demo, where the focus is going to be more on explaining the tactical situations and incidents that crop up playing through the scenarios, what I'm trying to do, how I'm trying to do it with the units from the different factions, and a lot less about being egotistical, self-congratulatory videos about smacking the AI around, because it really doesn't have that much of a chance. To kick off then, we've got the Desert Lancers scenario from the British Forces module. This is a medium-sized 50-minute mission with a small mechanised British infantry unit backed up by armour, artillery and close air support, aiming to destroy a Syrian second-line defensive position just inside the border. This is right at the start of the hypothetical NATO invasion of Syria. Looking at the briefing, I have no ground objectives here. There aren't any terrain features I need to secure. I'm going to get practically all my points from blowing things up and putting down any enemy pixel tripping that aren't sensible enough to surrender. This doesn't necessarily make it any easier than usual though. The force I've got to play with here is very low on infantry. I have a single infantry platoon backed up by some company HQ elements and a pair of scimitar light tanks, some mortars and a pair of GR9 Harriers loaded with 500-pound bombs. In 10 minutes I'll be reinforced with a pair of Challenger 2 main battle tanks and a section of 155mm guns, which completes the impression I'm building of my forces here. I'm low on manpower, but I'm high on firepower. I simply don't have the numbers to absorb casualties, especially if I have to engage in risky activities like clearing bunkers and storming trenches. So I'm going to stand off and smack the enemy down with the tanks, mortars, artillery and close air support before I even think of pushing up with my limited infantry. In terms of specifics, I can split the map into 4 sections. At the base here, where I'm deploying, my forces are in cover behind a reverse slope. Beyond this, there are 3 vertical sections. A low-lying area with a small farm on the left, a slightly wooded ridge in the centre, and an open, low-lying area on the right. The enemy forces on either flank are separated from one another by the central ridge. If I focus my attention on one side, I'm going to be shielded from the Syrian defenders on the other. The broad plan then is to get eyes up on top of my reverse slope and start spotting enemy forces from the word go, engaging targets with my mortars and the HQ company's javelin section if I get the opportunity. Once I'm happy I've neutralised the bulk of the enemy's combat power, I'm leaning towards attacking on the left, moving up from this wood to the farm and clearing any enemy positions beyond before swinging up on the ridge and then dominating the other flank from the high ground. That's not set in stone though. My force is very mobile and it's so small I'm inclined to handle it very conservatively. I'm going to be able to swap between options pretty much at will. The briefing does mention that the Syrians will get points for occupying their defensive position in this scenario, which means that I can't remain at standoff distance the whole time if I want to be sure of a win. The end state in combat mission games is determined by the difference between the two sides' scores. If I want to be sure of a victory, I need to be getting some troops up the map into the likely location of the enemy objective in order to deny them the points. That's an issue for later though. The first thing I need to do is find the enemy. I've got scouts going out on either flank to begin with, covered by some tentative overwatch from the 2 scimitars. On the left, about 30 seconds in, my sniper team is just disembarking from their Bulldog APC as enemy mortars start falling in the woods where I want to set them up. The marksman takes a free chunk of shrapnel to the face and goes down. His number 2 gets wounded on the next turn, and after that I simply run him back to the safety of the Bulldog to wait out the artillery, sending one of the scimitars over to reserve from those woods instead. On the right, in the absence of anyone less expendable, I'm scouting with the Company 2IC team, crawling them up onto the top of the ridgeline through some rocky ground. Once they get up there, they start spotting Syrian tanks dug in behind barbed wire obstacles. The tanks are old T-55s, which might not sound very dangerous given that they're over 50 years old, but a tank is a tank, and those 100mm guns are easily capable of destroying anything I have on the map right now. They aren't going anywhere though. These T-55s are static emplacements with no fuel or driver. They've been set up as a kind of instinct armoured 100mm gun bunker. The tanks are strung out across the right hand section of the map in the ridgeline, and after the scouting scimitar on my left spots some infantry in foxholes with more barbed wire in line with the T-55s, I've got a good handle on the position of the Syrian defensive line I'm here to deal with. There's still a good 5 turns before my own armour turns up, and I don't want to be moving forward with those T-55s and tanks. My mortars aren't going to be able to take them out, and I've ordered my air support in for T+15 minutes to give me time to spot and destroy any potential anti-air assets that might be hanging around. But I have got the Javelin section that I can push up onto the ridge to start the engagement. The Javelin section consists of a section HQ and 2 detachments of 2 2-man Javelin teams. That's 8 launchers overall, with extra missiles in the Bulldogs. So while we're not on the same everybody gets a Javelin scale as the US Army, the British Infantry Company still has some significant anti-armour capability. The T-55s aren't going anywhere, so I can pop my Javelins up onto the ridge and have a go at taking them out. This isn't without risk, but I'm engaging the enemy at range with small, easy to hide teams that can quickly run away into the safety of the reverse slope if it all starts to go wrong. The Javelins start engaging pretty quickly, knocking out 2 of the enemy tanks and putting some missiles into some concrete machine gun bunkers, but they are attracting some attention. Machine gun fire is heading their way, and the surviving T-55 manages to get a round off that lands near the 2IC and wipes out one of the Javelin teams, which means it's time for them to pull back. 2 out of 3 and 2 bunkers is good enough for now. They've made life a lot easier for the challengers when they turn up. While this is going on, the scimitar observing on the left has been spotting more and more dug-in infantry and started directing my mortars onto them. The TAC AI for the scimitar is being quite savvy here. Although it's got a 30mm cannon and a coax machine gun to play with, it's quite happy to keep a low profile and hold fire on all the enemy infantry until it spots a threat. This turns out to be a Syrian SPG Night-Recaller's rifle, set up in the defensive line. Again, like the T-55s, it's old equipment, but capable of doing a light tank like the scimitar and nasty. And as soon as the scimitar notices it, it opens up, pins it down, kills the gunner and drives it away. Just as the mortars start falling on an enemy HQ unit on the far left of the line, I want to triple the Syrians' command and control whenever I get the opportunity. The challengers turn up. These are something of a game changer with regards to my force maker. Unlike everything else I've got to work with here, the Challenger 2s are not one-hit wonders, they are extremely heavily armoured. This doesn't mean that they're invincible, especially for flanking or rear shots, and sustained fire can render them useless by degrading the optics, radios and other external systems, but I can afford to use them with a kind of aggression that I can't afford with my Bulldogs, Scimitars and Infantry. The Challengers head over to the right flank straight away and take up hold down positions on the ridgeline, quickly spotting and knocking out the remaining T-55. With that gone, and what looks like spotting rounds for an enemy fire mission dropping near the right hand ridge, I'm pulling the Javelin teams all the way back to the safety of their transports on the reverse slope, and I'm reversing one of the Challengers back so I can switch it to the left flank in preparation for an attack on that side with my infantry platoon. Not only is that left-hand section a smaller area to clear, but it looks like it's less strongly manned by the Syrians, and I'm going to be able to overwhelm them more easily over there before swinging over the ridge and outflanking the stronger defence on the right. This turns out to be a poorly timed decision. As my units start to pull off the right-hand ridge, Syrian armoured reinforcements arrive. Very suddenly, the single Challenger 2 I left up there is on brown alert, facing down a wave of 7 T-62s, and there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it until the turn ends and I can adjust the orders. This is not, in any way, a fair contest. The Syrians are also getting some infantry reinforcements this turn, and the Challenger spends the first 20 seconds of the minute firing at them before it spots and engages the first T-62, a small hull-down target at 800 metres. The Challenger puts a 120mm sabot round straight through the gun mantlet, knocking it out, before proceeding to knock out 2 more T-62s before the turn is done, without suffering any kind of return fire whatsoever. Obviously this isn't as bad a tactical situation as it might seem. The Challenger 2 is a top tier main battle tank, fully equipped with thermal sights, computerised fire control systems, a hunter-killer system, advanced armour and a highly trained crew. This one is sitting in a perfect hull down position, alert and ready to spot and engage targets when they appear. The T-62s are not only much older vehicles with lower caliber guns and weaker armour, but they fall a long way short of something like a Challenger in terms of optics, spotting ability and first round hit probability. To make matters worse for the Syrians here, they've just popped onto the battlefield, they're out of the command and control links with no idea what's going on, and they're moving forward to either counterattack or reinforce their defensive line. which means that they're having a harder time spotting the Challenger. In the next turn, not only does the first Challenger continue casually picking off helpless Syrian tankers as the second rushes back up to join the engagement, but the Harriers join the party too, and the Syrian armoured reinforcements melt away with no impact on the battle whatsoever. It's important to point out that this was not a foregone conclusion. As I indicated earlier, even something as outdated as a T-55 or a T-62 is a serious threat to everything in my force except the Challengers, and if I had encountered those Syrian tanks in less favourable circumstances and got caught with my pants down, the Challengers may well run into problems. As it is though, it looks like all the enemy armour is dealt with, Syrian infantry coming up as reinforcements are caught out in the open with no cover, and their buddies already occupying the foxholes of the defensive line are starting to flee as the Challengers begin laying into them. The Harriers have also turned up and are starting to drop bombs on things. The bunker on the left flank gets taken out by a direct hit, which means that it's probably safe to start moving up over on that flank. This means it's the infantry's time to get stuck in. Nothing has really happened to change my plan. I still intend to clear the left, take the ridge, outflank the right, but although I've been hammering all the Syrians I can see over on the left, I'm still going to be moving quite cautiously. My mechanized platoon is going to take up positions on the crest of the ridge next to the wood, where they can take advantage of the cover on the reverse slope on a moment's notice, and the fact that the centre ridge will mask their movements for most of the Syrian line. Backing them up are the two Scimitars, the Sniper Team Bulldog and one of the Challenger 2s, and I'm going to be continuously dropping mortars and artillery on anything that looks remotely threatening. But being able to mass all this firepower doesn't make my pixel shopper invincible. As one of the infantry sections deploys, they take a burst from an enemy PK machine gun set up in one of the farm buildings and take a casualty. The MG is quickly shut down and suppressed by all my fire, but the point is made that the Syrians might be down, but they're not out quite yet. This, unfortunately, is something I'm just going to have to live with. I'm almost halfway through the 15-minute time limit for this scenario. I haven't even moved 100 metres away from my deployment zone yet, and while I'm confident I've inflicted significant casualties on the enemy, I still need at least to get a toehold in their defensive line to be certain of securing the victory. That means that the infantry has to go forwards into harm's way. I can back them up with as much firepower as I like, put as much suppression fire out as I want, but at the end of the day, they are always going to be vulnerable to surprise fire from hidden keyholed or defilated enemy troops. Somewhat counterintuitively though, they are likely to be more vulnerable in their APCs than they are on foot. The Bulldogs are very old British APCs, originally built in the 1960s. The last one was delivered in 1971, and while they've had a substantial upgrade package, they're bulletproof, they're equipped with explosive reactive armour and slat armour to protect them from the shape-charged warheads like those fired from RPGs, but if they do get penetrated by something, the passengers inside aren't going to be getting out. Given that Syrian infantry are equipped with weapons like the RPG, that there might be as yet unseen threats out there including mines, this is a fortified defensive position after all, it's going to be less risky to scout the route on foot first. This has the added, and somewhat questionable, benefit of exposing a juicy target to any Syrian soldiers out there. To some extent, the advancing infantry are bait to tempt the enemy into opening fire and exposing their positions to my fire support. This doesn't mean I'm pushing forward as if it's the first day of the Somme though. I've got one section moving up by bounds, and for most of their route they're out of sight of the enemy in the dead ground between the ridge and the farm. It doesn't take them long to cross, and now that I can be fairly sure the path ahead isn't mined, I can send their Bulldog up to join them, and then start pushing the other sections up. As they get closer, my infantry starts getting more consistent spots on the infantry at the farm, mostly because they're trying to shoot at them, which means that instead of putting down generic suppressive fire on the buildings, I can direct all the cannon, heavy machine gun and tank fire I'm putting out onto specific targets. After a few turns lurking on the outside of the farm and literally shooting it to pieces, in combination with the total destruction of their armour and constant MG mortar and artillery fire across the length of their line, combined with bombing runs from the Harriers, the AI has had enough and it surrenders. I've lost 2 men dead and 3 wounded. The Syrian defenders have lost 123 dead and 52 wounded, along with 10 tanks, a pair of UAZ jeeps, the 3 static T-55s, and to cap it all off, 2 of the concrete bunkers have been destroyed by the Harriers. Unsurprisingly, with the ending score being 850 to 16 in my favour, this is a total victory, but only because the AI has given up. If I cease fire the turn before, I don't get quite as many points for destroying the enemy, and the Syrians get a solid 300 for holding onto their defensive position. It would still be a British tactical victory, but on the CM scale of winning, a tactical victory is only one step above a draw. Realistically though, after I, to some extent, got lucky destroying the T-62 platoons, the Syrians had very little chance of dealing with the Challenger 2s as long as I kept them at a distance. They were not completely toothless. At one point the Challenger on the right was engaged by two AT-4 ATGMs from the Syrian backline, and although the first team missed, was spotted and neutralised in short order. The second AT-4 was a lot more difficult to get eyes on and actually managed to hit the Challenger with two missiles. They weren't able to penetrate. These AT-4s are the A model, which is capable of cutting through 400mm of rolled homogeneous armour, while the frontal turret armour of the Challenger 2 is classified but equivalent to at least double that. But we can look at the tank's subsystems and see that the radio has been heavily damaged and that the targeting, IR optics, smoke launchers and tracks have all been degraded. In a long battle, a longer one than this kind of degradation can build up to the point that while the tank itself remains unpenetrated and the crew inside are perfectly fine, it's no longer an effective unit. That's a little beside the point though. Desert Lancers is a solid introductory scenario for the British Forces module. You have a small, relatively fragile force at your fingertips made up of some of the UK staple units, and it's interesting to find ways to make that force work. In a similar way to Day at the Beach for the US Marines, it feels a lot to me like this is more of a showcase scenario than an even contest, but that might just have been the vibe that I've gotten from it. If any of you guys have played this, feel free to let everyone know what you did and how it went down in the comments. If anyone has played it head to head against another human being, then it'd be really interesting to know how that pans out. Hope you all enjoyed this and found it useful. I'll catch you all in the next video.